name is Gloria and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up, which is all the books that I read in the month of December. This month I definitely read less books than usual, in part due to the holidays and also just I was in a bit of a reading slump. I probably also watched a little bit more TV than I have in like the summer, but that's just kind of like the wintry cozy vibes. But in total, I read or listened to 7 books this month, and I'm also halfway or more than halfway in several books, but I know that I'm not gonna be able to finish tomorrow, which is the last day of the year. So those will probably be my January wrap-up. The first book that I read in the month of December is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This book is very hyped. It's all over BookTube. There's a show about it on Hulu, which is where I think I originally heard about the name. This is a very loved or hated book. There's a lot of people that love it. There's a lot of people that hate it. I think that I fall somewhere in the middle. I ultimately gave it like a 2.5 star because I liked how it was written. I'm a sucker for a book that draws me in and wants me to read it all the way through. I read this in one day. It's really easy to read quickly and you want to read it in one sitting. So I can appreciate how the author was able to just suck me into the story. At the same time, the story annoyed me. I was really upset with the characters for making dumb life decisions. I didn't like that they miscommunicated. What are you doing next? You're not allowed to be on the table though. Yeah, do we have miscommunication issues? Do we have a love-hate relationship? Sometimes, yeah. Why don't you go look at the birdies out the window? Okay, go for it. So as I was saying, I didn't like that these characters didn't communicate well. I do feel like it was a glimpse into like the modern world of secular dating and just like not talking, not really putting a label into anything, not saying how you feel about each other. This book confused me. I fall somewhere in the middle about it. Ultimately, the story just kind of made me sad. Next, also a borrowed book. Room by Emma Donoghue. So I wanted to read it this month so that I could return it. I actually watched the movie when it came out several years ago, so I knew the premise of the story and I knew what happened. And I kind of wish I didn't know the story because then I feel like I would have enjoyed the book a little bit more, but it is still a great book. I will say it was a little slow for me at times, which is why I gave it somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4 star. But if you don't know, the story is about a woman that gets kidnapped when she's young and gives birth to a child in her kidnapped room, and this whole book is written from the perspective of her 5-year-old child. So for him, he's grown up in this, I don't know, 12 foot by 12 foot room, and all he knows in his life is the stuff that his mom has been trying to teach him. And so you're reading this sort of trying to figure out what's happening and what their life is. I don't want to give away too much because there's other stuff that happens, but I will just give props to the author of how unique this story is. And you're reading it as if it was a true story. Like it feels like it could have been a true story. So I thought the author did a good job. And if you're unfamiliar with the story, I highly recommend you read the book first, but then also watch the movie because the movie was also very good. Up next, I read Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I gave it a 1 star. I really didn't like this thriller. I didn't know anything about this book going into it, just that it's a popular author and a popular thriller. But I don't recommend reading this book. First of all, as a thriller, I think it's poorly written because I was able to guess who did it from the first like few chapters. Also just didn't like the story itself. It's about a girl who has mental health issues and she's a cutter, and because of her childhood and what's happened to her, she's a journalist who then is required to go back to her hometown and like dig up her past and figure out what's happening with these girls who are getting murdered in town, and it's her complicated relationship with her mother and also all these weird people in this town. It just felt really unrealistic, badly written, bad thriller, was able to guess it. Just not good at all. Not good. Next up, I listened to Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. This is his new recently released memoir, autobiography. He introduces it as like, this is not necessarily a story of my life. These are like the lessons that I've learned. I gave this book a 3 star because I did enjoy it. I think there's some funny parts. He's definitely has some character and personality that's very interesting and unique. And he tells the story in a way that is the big life lessons that he's learned. It's not necessarily like his chronological story or exactly what happened to him in detail. It's more like, here's a big story, here's a big story, here's a few little stories, and these are the big things that I learned from those moments in my life and that have led me to where I am today. He's very poetic with his words and the way he narrates it, and the contents of the book itself. I found it interesting. I didn't know anything about Matthew McConaughey before this, besides the movies that he's in. So yeah, I liked it. It was a really quick listen. I think it was only about 5 hours. Up next, I read The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This is a very popular book all over BookTube, all over Goodreads. It was a 2020 release. This book follows two sisters who are technically black, but have very light skin, and they go their separate ways when they're teens, and one lives her life married to a white man and considers herself white, and one marries a black man and considers herself black and has a very dark daughter. It also follows the two sisters and their two daughters. I gave this book 3 stars because there are things that I really liked about it, but overall I was a little bored by the story and kind of wanted more things to happen, and I wanted more information about the sisters, but it was almost more focused on their daughters' stories instead. And there's some interesting themes in this book, but I just thought it was, it was an okay read. Next, I read The Orphans Tale by Pam Jenoff. I read one of Pam Jenoff's books in the beginning of the year called The Lost Girls of Paris. So I was familiar with the author, and I would say that this book lived up to the sort of mediocre World War II historical fiction that I was expecting. It was just an okay historical fiction. I didn't find it particularly gripping in any kind of way. I gave this book a 2 stars. I just really didn't like the character development. There was an insta-love kind of thing where 2 characters fell in love with each other for no apparent reason, and they didn't even know each other except like seeing each other. I just didn't like that. The story follows 2 separate women. One is Dutch not to give up a child, but then finds a train car full of Jewish children and takes one of them and runs into the woods and is found by this German circus. And this other woman is part of this German circus, and they become friends, and there's drama and love. Overall, it just wasn't a good story. So I don't recommend if you like World War II historical fiction. There's probably a ton of other better written and better stories out there. So because that's like a 2 for 2 of not being a really successful story, I don't see myself reading any more of Pam Jenoff's writing. And lastly, I'm currently listening to 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Toni Renke. I'm about halfway through this book, and between today and tomorrow, I think I'll finish it because it's quite a short audiobook. I've read a few other books this year that have to do with digital minimalism or letting go of your phone. This is a Christian nonfiction book on the topic, which I think is good, and I'm interested to get the Christian perspective of this digital age and kind of what it's doing to us. And I plan on reading more books in 2021 about this topic because I want to have a healthy relationship with my digital consumption and not fall into the downward spiral that so many people are in. / maybe I'm a little bit in, because it's really hard to live without these things, and it's really hard to not have these on you 24/7. So I'll definitely finish this book in the next day or 2, and I'm leaning on 4 stars. I think that there's some really good topics and really good things that the author is writing about and has a perspective on that I find interesting. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in the month of December. Thank you so much for watching this video, and stay tuned for my 2020 favorite books of the year video coming out soon.